Greetings, Regional Modernism students. I hope this finds you well. Welcome to week number 6. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving break, that it was a time for recharging and to relax, and that you are ready to go for another week. This week we'll be focusing on abstract expressionism, focusing on a distinctive American contribution to this point, the largely European history of modern art. When American artists are interested in engaging in the tradition of modern art, they are usually going to Paris. We saw this with Marsden Hartley, with Alfred Mauer, those artists in the first 2 decades of the 20th century, that in terms of being exposed to works of modern art and modern artists, they were going to Paris, hanging out in the apartment of Gertrude Stein and her brother Leo, where they could see the latest works of modern art by painters like Picasso and Matisse. But into the 30s and then into the 40s, a unique phenomenon occurred, and that is there were beginning to be communities of artists in New York. It first takes place, it congeals in many ways during the Works Project Association, the various federal government programs that Roosevelt's New Deal established to give artists work and a paycheck. And they were painting public murals. They were doing other works that had a sense of a kind of a medieval or Renaissance sense. Public buildings, artists being hired to work in groups for public buildings. And it created a certain sense of community for these artists in New York. And then into the 40s, there were, even located in a particular area in south of 10th Street in Manhattan, southern Manhattan, were a couple neighborhoods where artists were living together, spending time together, talking about art, talking about its significance and importance for them, debating various issues about the art, and their work then began to be a manifestation of that particular locale. And you have the emergence of what comes to be known as abstract expressionism. The artists like Jackson Pollock and Willem de Kooning, Franz Klein, Mark Rothko, Barnett Newman, artists whose work came out of, were in responses to that community and the conversations and the friendships and the associations that they had. And it's the community structure that generates the work. And even though the work now exists on big walls at the Met, Museum of Modern Art, and museums throughout the world, the work itself, particularly the work from the mid 40s to the mid 50s, was shaped and molded by this social network, and that these paintings were in many ways to transact that social specific network. Many of the paintings were given as gifts and Christmas presents. Most of the artists couldn't afford much, and also the artists would open up galleries, artist-run galleries, co-op galleries. One was the 9th Street Gallery. There was a gallery owner, Charles Egan, who transformed a storefront into a gallery, but none of the artists actually believed that he would sell any of the work, and he didn't even sell any of the work. It was an exhibition space. It was a space for social gathering. the social structure of the art world. The exhibition, the artist opening was an occasion to affirm the community structure. And so abstract expressionism is this really unique movement that has very specific neighborhood, communal characteristics that also begin to transact broader, begin to be symbolic of or embody national values. And particularly in the 50s with the Cold War, the U.S. government was very interested in, ironically, the federal government was interested in avant-garde art. And they were interested in avant-garde art because the work of Pollock and de Kooning and Franz Klein were emphasizing individual freedom, the spontaneity of the brushstroke, the autonomy of the individual acting in accordance to their own free will, which was under threat in Europe through fascism and through communism. And the focus on the part of the U.S. government was to affirm that freedom produces great culture. And so abstract expressionism becomes a weapon in the Cold War. These painters who didn't think they were going to sell anything in the late 40s and early 50s, who were hanging out drinking coffee because it was cheap. They could hang out at this place called the Waldorf Cafeteria and nurse coffees for the day without getting shooed out. Their paintings were then being used on a global scale. So these are, I think this is a very interesting period, and the work has and the paintings have a sense that they're participating in the broad history of modernism, paintings that were intended to be shown in big museums, and that's simply not the case. These artists were making work in many ways because they didn't know what else to do. They didn't think they were selling the work. Very few curators and critics were spending time with them. The only critics that were spending a significant amount of time with them was Clement Greenberg and Harold Rosenberg. And so this period is a unique manifestation of the localized, community-based dialectic between the individual and the collective, between the community structure, the informal community structure of a neighborhood, and this abstract notion of what it means to be an American, and how Jackson Pollock's paintings became symbolic of what it means to be an American. I want to remind you that your final paper proposals, many of you have sent them, and I'll be responding to you today. They look great. I'm very excited about it. They're due this Sunday night, and send them in as early as you can. I'll be responding. I'll be going through your responses again. This week I didn't get as far as I wanted to over the Thanksgiving break, and we are beginning to reach the end. And so next week is the last week that I'll actually introduce new content, and you'll be focusing on your paper. So write me if you have any questions. Have a great week and enjoy these readings. Take care.